Xia Baolong vows to carry out in-depth research to resolve new problems and new situations in Hong Kong and Macau. Hong Kong Bar Association members begin their visit to Beijing. And Joe Biden arrives in Northern Ireland to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. Hello and welcome to TVB News. Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office Director Xia Baolong will arrive in Hong Kong tomorrow for a 6-day visit. Prior to his departure, the top Beijing official has vowed to build an invincible army to carry out in-depth research aiming to resolve new problems and new situations arising in the two SARs. Jackie Lin with more.
In a statement, the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office revealed that Xia Baolong made the speech about the two SARs in an education conference on Monday. In it, the top Beijing official overseeing Hong Kong affairs talked about the importance of further cementing the two establishes and two safeguards. They referred to the principles of establishing and safeguarding the core status of President Xi Jinping within the Chinese Communist Party, with Xi's ideas being the bedrock of the new era of the party, and the party having the centralized authority in governing the country. With that as the foundation, Xia said they could break new grounds to build an invincible army in Beijing's work on Hong Kong and Macau. Such work includes in-depth research and the use of innovative theories from the party to resolve new situations and new problems arising in the two SARs. It will be Xia's first trip to Hong Kong since Beijing announced an overhaul of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. The office has been elevated to the level that is under the direct supervision of the party's top echelon. It's understood Xia's visit will touch on the city's innovation and fintech development and also focus on pain points revolving around the poor and the elderly in Hong Kong. Professor Lau Siu-kai, a consultant to the Chinese Association of Hong Kong and Macau Studies, said that might reflect more efforts and support from Beijing on Hong Kong's housing and social issues. Sarah Lee, the sole Hong Kong representative on the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, said she believes Xia is set to shed light on Hong Kong's path ahead with messages from Beijing on the city's opportunities and challenges down the road. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
A delegation of the Hong Kong Bar Association traveled to Beijing today on the group's first visit to the mainland in 5 years. The delegation, led by Chairman Victor Dawes, met with members of the Basic Law Committee and officials of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Dawes stressed that they discussed the implementation of Article 23 of the Basic Law, as well as the concerns of SAR residents and the legal sector. Timothy Lee reports.
After 5 years of suspended ties, the Bar Association's 20-member delegation, including Chairman Victor Dawes and Vice Chairman Derek Chan, arrived at the capital today, marking a major thaw in relations. The group arrived at the Great Hall of the People at around 10:30 a.m. to meet with Basic Law Committee Director Shen Chunyao. The delegation then met with officials of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, including Director General Ma Xin-min of the Department of Treaty and Law. Bar Association Chairman Victor Dawes said the delegation discussed with the Basic Law Committee Director for over half an hour, adding that both sides earnestly shared their opinions on the national security law and Article 23 of the Basic Law.
It was a constructive discussion. It was frank, and the fact that we overran quite a bit perhaps indicate to you that it was a meaningful discussion. It was going to go on had it not been the fact that we had a subsequent appointment at the Foreign Ministry. I think we have made ourselves very clear, and I'm sure Mr. Shan and the authorities understand the Bar's position.
Dawes also said he hopes the Bar Association will resume annual visits to Beijing. The group's trip will last for 5 days, during which the delegation will visit the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office and Peking University prior to returning to the city on Saturday. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Jailed Next Digital founder Jimmy Lai filed another judicial review in a bid to overturn a National Security Committee decision last month. The Committee for Safeguarding National Security earlier ruled that allowing Lai to hire British lawyer Tim Owen could constitute a national security risk. In the writ submitted Tuesday, Lai also requested the Immigration Department to retract the decision to reject Owen's work visa application. The writ also said if the authority of the National Security Committee could be interpreted as covering all security-related matters, that means they could also have the power to rule over any judicial process. And that could lead to the collapse of the entire judicial system, the writ noted. U.S. President Joe Biden is in Northern Ireland to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement that largely ended 30 years of sectarian fighting. Biden will spend just half a day in the province before heading to the Irish Republic for 3 days of meetings with officials and distant relatives. Matthew Bray reports.
Biden arrived at a windy Belfast airport at a delicate time in the province as the largest pro-British party continues to boycott the devolved power-sharing government. He was met by British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, flanked by Joseph Kennedy III of the storied Irish-American political family, who is also an envoy to Northern Ireland. Biden will hold talks with Sunak and the leaders of the province's 5 main political parties ahead of a speech at Ulster University. His main aims are keeping the Irish Accords in place along with the Windsor Framework agreed between the EU and Britain to ease Brexit trade barriers. Security concerns were highlighted with the discovery of 4 pipe bombs in Cregan Cemetery in Londonderry, a city 110 kilometres from Belfast, where Catholic rioters attacked police Monday. There was a dissident IRA march in Derry on Monday where a police vehicle was set on fire and petrol bombs thrown. The pro-British Democratic Unionists want further changes to the Windsor Framework, but London has said that is not possible. Biden will be hoping his visit north and south can keep the fragile peace from fracturing any further. Biden will also address the Irish Parliament in Dublin as well as make visits to County Mayo and County Louth, where he will dive into his Irish ancestry. Preparations were well underway in Carlingford in North East Ireland.
Well, the mood in the town is the most important man in the world, as we call him, a local. He's a local person. He's coming home to, as president of America, the most, a great achievement for the area.
This is our 8-ounce Joe Biden burger for tomorrow. It's a 8-ounce locally sourced burger, bacon, American cheese, and all the trimmings.
Analysts say Biden's visit illustrates the peace process is not in a good place, but he will be keen to see that the British-Irish relationship remains solid. Matthew Bray, TVB News.
The United States and the Philippines have agreed to a plan that will see the U.S. deliver some more defense assistance over the next decade. China says the alliance must not harm its own security. David Garrett reports.
We can expect to see more of this cooperation, much more. These are previous military exercises carried out jointly in the Philippines by their forces and the United States. These annual drills are getting larger and are set to become bigger still. In Washington, the longtime allies set out a plan to work even more closely.
Under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, so that our forces can work even more closely together, including to provide humanitarian assistance and respond to disasters. Secretary Austin and I also reaffirmed the United States' unwavering commitment to standing with the Philippines against any intimidation or coercion, including in the South China Sea, and to preserving a region that's governed by international law.
We especially welcome the United States' pledge to fast-track and ramp up support for the modernization of our defense, civilian law enforcement, and humanitarian assistance and disaster response capabilities.
The 38th edition of Bala-Kitan opened earlier this week. It'll run until the end of the month and will involve more than 17,000 soldiers. It is the latest show of American firepower in Asia. The US has previously warned Beijing over any aggression towards Taiwan.
It's not to engage in a new Cold War. It's not to contain China. But in doing that, in trying to advance a world that is peaceful, secure, stable, and with more opportunity, we're going to stand up very vigorously for our values and for our interests, and we're doing that with regard to China.
In the coming weeks, there will be live fire drills, including a boat-sinking rocket assault in waters across the South China Sea. In Beijing today, Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin gave his response. He said China expresses its grave concern and dissatisfaction. Wang added that the US-Philippines statement smears China's legitimate maritime law enforcement and fabricates rumours against China, and China firmly opposes this. David Garrett, TVB News.
In other news, a robotic dog and a cone-shaped security robot are joining the New York Police Department. The mechanical contraption known as DigiDog was first used in 2020, but the contract for the device was cut short as critics derided it as creepy and dystopian. Now it is going back into service, with the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, saying he won't bow to anti-robot dog pressure. The dog will be deployed in risky situations like hostage standoffs starting this summer. The cone robot will be deployed in the Times Square subway station in a 7-month pilot program. Welcome back. French President Emmanuel Macron arrived in the Netherlands Tuesday for a 2-day state visit, but he could not escape his country's domestic issues. Protesters who are against Macron's new law that has changed the retirement age in France to 64 from 62 heckled the president while he was giving a speech in The Hague. Tracy Furness has more.
President Macron was greeted by the Dutch King Willem-Alexander on arriving in the Netherlands Tuesday. It was the first state visit to the country by a French president since Jacques Chirac 23 years ago. Protesters were out in force near the Dutch National War Monument, where Macron, accompanied by his wife Brigitte, was set to lay a wreath. The banners read, "We won't retreat," referring to the new law that was recently pushed through the French Parliament that put the retirement age up from 62 to 64. Macron later held meetings with the leaders of both houses of the Dutch Parliament before delivering a speech at The Hague. As Macron was starting his speech on setting up a new economic doctrine for Europe, protesters again pushed their discontent onto the day's proceedings, interrupting his speech.
And our common values. Hello.
I think we lost something. Where is French democracy? Where did we lost it? Where did we lost it?
I can answer this question if you give me some time.
When you make us again, French Parliament. Nobody listens. You have millions of people in the streets. Conventions of climate has been put aside. What can you say when you talk about Europe?
Do you allow me to answer?
Macron went on to answer the hecklers, saying, "A democracy is a place where you can demonstrate." The two hecklers were holding a banner that read, "President of Violence and Hypocrisy." They were eventually dragged out of the auditorium. When Macron was able to speak, he touched on the war in Ukraine, saying the European Union was facing its most perilous time.
Our union is said to grow stronger through crisis, but never had we faced such a threat. A war involving nuclear power at our borders, and an unthinkable event that jeopardized lasting peace and brought violent conflict back to the European continent.
The Macrons ended their first day by attending a state banquet hosted by King Willem-Alexander and Queen Maxima of the Netherlands. On Wednesday, Macron is expected to hold talks with Prime Minister Mark Rutte. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Meantime, the Hong Kong Birdwatching Society says Hao Hoi Wan's Blackfaced spoonbill population has dropped below 300, the second lowest over the past decade. A study in January showed that out of 130 locations surveyed, there is a record number of around 6,603 black-faced spoonbills in the world, an increase of 441 compared with last year. However, the number in Hao Hoi Wan has dwindled to 299 70 less than last year. Yu Yat Tung, director of the Hong Kong Birdwatching Society, says Hao Hoi Wan is blessed with a great habitat and ecosystem. However, it's being damaged by urban development. He hopes the government will be proactive in protecting these birds and set up a wetland buffer zone to protect nature. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.